They called it the Sunder Zone, a stretch of Earth's crust ripped open during the resource wars, left to rot by every government too afraid to tame it. Toxic winds howled through canyons of blackened steel. Radiation levels spiked higher than any war front. The only things that moved inside were wild drones gone feral, old combat AIs with no allegiance, and whatever else refused to die. No human had ever walked out of that zone. No one dared. Until the Deathworlders came. 2,000 of them. Tall, armored, genetically perfected by the Interstellar Accord's finest minds. They weren't born. They were engineered to survive in hell. The Accord had grown arrogant. They watched Earth from orbit, shaking their heads at our primitive species. They studied our wars and called us savages. They dissected our biology and dismissed us as evolutionary flukes. But Earth wasn't a planet. It was a crucible. And they never understood what it made us. Colonel Marcus Brandt did. He sat in the debriefing chamber, watching the last transmission over and over again. The screen flickered. Screams cut through static. One Deathworlder's visor cracked open, flesh melting under acidic fog. Another choked as something unseen shredded his armor like wet paper. Request evac. Gods. No. No. Then silence. Out of 2,000, only 5 came back. 5. Brandt clenched his jaw as the council droned on behind him. The Interstellar Accord blamed the mission's failure on environmental unpredictability. They tossed around terms like extreme terrestrial hostility and unforeseen native variables, bureaucratic cowardice wrapped in academic polish. But Marcus knew. He had seen what Earth could do, and he had seen what it bred. Those 5 survivors weren't even soldiers anymore. They were wreckage with a heartbeat. And one of them was talking. That's why Marcus was here, standing behind reinforced glass, staring into the medbay where Jaren, the squad's second-in-command, lay restrained. He was built like a tank. Carbon-plated bones, synthetic organs, reflexes honed by generations of combat training across 5 galaxies. But now, he screamed when they turned the lights on. He flinched at the sight of dirt. He wept uncontrollably when they played thunderstorm audio from Earth. "Tell me," Marcus said, voice low, steady. "What happened in there?" Jaren's head jerked up. His eyes, those pale, genetically enhanced eyes, were bloodshot and wide. "You put us in a nightmare," he rasped. Marcus folded his arms. "You volunteered. We thought it was a trial, a test of strength. We didn't know." Zaren's voice cracked. "We didn't know your planet hates everything." There it was, the first honest thing any off-worlder had said about Earth in decades. Jaren trembled. "The sky had teeth, Colonel. The wind wasn't just wind. It followed us. Machines woke up. Things were crawled from the ground. We fought. We burned through ammo. We screamed into the void. Earth doesn't care who you are or what tech you bring." Marcus didn't flinch. He knew. He had been born in Detroit sector, before the Accord rebuilt it. He'd hunted rats the size of wolves, killed for water, survived civil war with a rusted rifle. He didn't need enhancements to understand pain. Earth trained you with it. "You want to know why only 5 made it out?" Jaren whispered. Marcus nodded. Jaren's eyes filled with tears. "Because one of you was already in there. A human. Alone. No suit. No command. Just rage. He hunted us, Colonel. One by one." Marcus didn't react. "We called him the Ghost," Jaren said, voice hollow. "He didn't speak. Didn't stop. He used the zone like it was part of him. The planet loved him. Fed him." Marcus's lips curled just slightly. "Let me guess," he said. "Black gear. Scarred face. Moved like a shadow?" Jaren stared, shaking. "That wasn't a ghost," Marcus said. "That was my brother." Marcus didn't flinch. He watched Jaren shrink into his restraints like a child whispering about monsters under the bed. But this monster wasn't imaginary. He had a name, Rhys Brandt, and he'd been dead to the world for nearly a decade. "What the hell was he doing in there?" Jaren asked, voice barely audible over the humming medbay machines. Marcus didn't answer. He didn't have to. Rhys was the kind of man the military created during the final years of Earth's last civil war. Not a soldier. A weapon. Sharpened through betrayal, abandonment, and loss. They trained him to kill, and then cut him loose when peace became more profitable. They left him in the ashes. But Rhys didn't die. He vanished into the Sunder Zone. Now it made sense. Those 5 survivors hadn't just escaped Earth. They had escaped him. Marcus left the medbay without another word. He walked down the cold corridor of the Accord's orbital station, ignoring the cautious salutes and sideways glances. Every officer knew his reputation. Calm, efficient, ruthless when necessary. But even they sensed the shift now. He wasn't calm. He was calculating. Back in his quarters, he opened a classified dossier. No holograms, no vocal interface, just black text on a gray screen. Subject: Rhys Brandt. Status: presumed deceased. Unauthorized zone entry, year 77 PE. Designation: former Earth Recon Elite, Ghost Tier Psych. Evaluation: extreme isolationist, high survival instinct, potential for rogue conditioning. Final notes: do not recover. Risk exceeds value. That last line had been written by someone sitting in a chair, sipping imported water, far from the Sunder Zone's bite. Rhys wasn't just written off, he was buried. Marcus scrolled further, past the redacted operations and strike logs. Then a photo. Rhys, younger, eyes hard as steel, arms soaked in grime, standing over a pile of alien wreckage. That look wasn't rage. It was focus. It was control in a place that punished weakness. The screen blurred as Marcus stared, because deep down, he knew. Rhys never went rogue. He adapted. And now the galaxy was learning what Earth did to those it didn't kill. A chime interrupted his thoughts. Encrypted channel. Director. "Colonel Brandt," said Admiral Hewland's voice. Cold. Political. Annoying. "We've analyzed the remaining survivors. The data aligns with projected outcomes. Earth remains classified as a Class X hostile environment." Marcus didn't respond. "However," Hewland continued, "the appearance of this ghost changes things. We cannot afford mythological figures derailing military control. We're sending in a retrieval team. You will command it." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "You want me to go in and bring him back?" "We want you to contain him, whatever that means." He chuckled bitterly. "You think you're sending a rescue party into hell. What you're really doing is sending sheep to provoke the one wolf we left behind. Then perhaps you'll succeed where the sheep failed." The channel went dead. Marcus stared out the viewport. Below, Earth loomed, blue and brown, scarred, alive. It didn't want saving. It didn't want peace. It wanted pain. And in the Sunder Zone, it had found a man who understood that perfectly. He tapped into his private line. "Prep a drop team. No Accord brass. Just veterans. Earthborn only." The voice on the other end hesitated. "Are you serious, sir? Another insertion?" Marcus stood, fastening his gun belt. "I'm not going in to save Rhys," he said. "I'm going in to remind him he still has a brother." He paused. "And if he's become what I think he has, I'll make sure he doesn't leave that zone alive." Marcus didn't sleep the night before the drop. Not out of fear. He hadn't felt that since his first kill at 13, but because his mind was a battlefield of old memories and sharper regrets. Rhys wasn't a ghost. He was the final consequence of Earth's cruelty, left unchecked for too long. And now Marcus had to face that consequence head-on, not as a soldier, but as a brother who'd once looked away when it mattered most. The dropship thrummed with tension as it sliced through the thick atmosphere. Inside, Marcus sat across from 4 men, each one Earthborn, scarred, and handpicked from units that didn't officially exist. There was Travis, an ex-tunnel rat from the Amazon uprising, skin like bark, dead calm under pressure. Juno, former orbital demolition, whose silence was broken only by gunfire. Deckard, close combat specialist, raised in the acid swamps of former Louisiana, skin pale and cracked from chemical burns. And finally, Miklos, a sniper who hadn't missed a shot since the Balkan reclamation, but who'd lost his entire platoon in the same mission. They were all killers, survivors, misfits with more blood than trust in their veins. "You briefed them?" Marcus asked. "Enough," Travis said, chewing on a matchstick. "We know he's human. That's all that matters." "No," Marcus said firmly. "He's not." They all stared. "He's what happens when humanity gets left in the dark too long," he added. "Reese doesn't kill like a man anymore. He kills like the Zone. Fast, silent, no mercy." Juno finally spoke. "Then why bring us? Sounds like you just want to die with style." Marcus stared back at her. "Because someone has to look him in the eye and remind him what he used to be." The dropship shook violently as the pilot's voice came through. "Crossing the outer perimeter now. No flight support past this point. You're on your own in 5. The compartment flooded with red warning lights. Each man checked their gear, silently preparing for hell. Marcus's hand lingered over a weathered photo tucked into his vest. 2 boys, one older, one younger, both standing atop an old Earth tank wreck, smiling. It was the last photo taken before Reese was sent to the front, and the last time Marcus saw him smile. The bay doors slammed open. The Zone's air hit like a punch, thick, hot, carrying a scent like rotting ozone and burning steel. No birds, no wind, just pressure, like the land itself was breathing. They dropped. The first step into the Sunder Zone felt like walking into a war crime. Trees twisted unnaturally. Buildings once whole were now fused into rock and bone, as if the earth had consumed its own cities. The silence wasn't empty. It was listening. They moved quickly, tight formation, sensors pinging uselessly in all directions. Tech didn't work here. Satellites glitched. Maps rewrote themselves. The Zone wasn't geography. It was defiance. 12 hours in, and Deckard found the first sign. "Tripwire," he said, kneeling. Not metal, bone. Human jawbones, strung together with vine-like tendons. "Signal?" Marcus asked. "Nope. Psychological. Scare tactic." Juno snorted. "Tactics imply sanity." "No," Marcus said, eyes scanning the tree line. "They imply intent." 2 hours later they found the first body. A cord armor, ripped from the inside. No scorch marks, no blood. Just hollow. Travis knelt. "He didn't die from weapons." "Then how?" Miklos asked. Travis looked up, grim. "He starved." Marcus stepped closer. "Impossible. The suits recycle nutrients for weeks." Travis stood slowly. "Unless the suit locked him in, starved him on purpose." They all turned to Marcus. "Your brother?" Miklos asked carefully. "He ever do things like this before?" "No," Marcus said. Then he hesitated. But he always knew how. Just then, a soft clicking echoed through the brush. Rhythmic, deliberate, not animal, not tech, human. They raised their weapons. Juno whispered, "He's watching us." "No," Marcus said, stepping forward into the open. "He's inviting us in." The sun didn't set in the Sunder Zone. Not really. It just dimmed, like the sky grew ashamed of what it saw below. Shadows stretched without logic, and colors bled into each other like bruises on the world's skin. They moved forward, deeper into terrain that looked less like Earth and more like something born from its nightmares. Concrete twisted into root systems. Roads pulsed faintly with warmth, like veins under skin. No birds, no bugs, just silence that crushed thought and bred paranoia. But Marcus wasn't scared. He was focused. They were inside Reese's domain now. Every broken sign, every rusted drone left half-sunken in tar-like sludge. It all meant something. Marcus saw the patterns, the choreography of madness. His brother had turned the zone into a message, and they were reading it one step at a time. "Movement ahead," Miklos whispered, adjusting his scope. Marcus held up a fist. The team halted. A figure emerged, walking slowly across a ruined overpass. Tattered cloak, no armor, barefoot. A woman. Juno swore under her breath. "No civilians in this zone. She's bait." Marcus nodded. "Probably." But he didn't raise his weapon. The woman stopped. Her skin was blistered, her eyes sunken. She wasn't human anymore, just a body kept upright by willpower or someone else's design. She lifted her arm and pointed behind them. They turned. Nothing. When they looked back, she was gone. "Son of a bitch," Deckard muttered. "He's playing games now." "No," Marcus said, staring at the empty road. "He's telling us to leave." They didn't. Not when the trail was finally warming. Later, as they passed through the skeleton of an old mining facility, they hit the second trap. A proximity-triggered sound burst. Not a bomb, not a flashbang, just a sound, high-pitched, repetitive, the exact frequency of a crying infant. Juno collapsed first, clutching her head, screaming. Miklos followed, babbling nonsense, biting his tongue bloody. Travis barely held his footing, eyes rolled back, face pale. Marcus alone stood tall. It wasn't because he was stronger. It was because he remembered. Reese had used that same frequency in training exercises during their covert ops days. A psychological disruptor tuned to provoke trauma responses. Military bandit after 3 suicides. But Reese never forgot tools that worked. Marcus shoved a needle into Juno's neck, then Miklos's. Emergency neural dampeners. It dulled the chaos long enough for them to breathe. When the sound finally cut off, the silence that followed was worse, because someone had turned it off manually. They were no longer following Reese's trail. They were walking into it. That night, if you could call it that, they camped inside the hull of a derelict mech unit, curled up around dim heating coils. No fire, no chatter, just the low hum of tension. Deckard broke the silence. "Why'd he stay here?" Marcus didn't answer right away. Then, "Because there's no justice outside the zone. Out there, he was disposable. In here, he's the king of a graveyard." Travis spat into the dirt. "This ain't a kingdom. It's a prison." Marcus stared into the dark. "No," he said softly. "It's a mirror." Later that night, Marcus found something tucked inside his rucksack. A single bullet, not standard issue, handmade, carved with initials, RB. It wasn't a threat. It was an invitation, a reminder of a pact made long ago. "If I ever lose myself, you end it." Marcus held the bullet to the dim light. His hands didn't shake. He'd come to bring Reese back, but now he wasn't sure if his brother wanted saving or judging. The rain started without warning. Not drops, needles, thin acidic, hot enough to burn through soft fabric. The team wrapped themselves in polymer sheeting as the Sunder Zone wept its poison on them. Every step sizzled, hissed. Trees didn't grow here. They curled upward like claws, bark pitted with scars. No one spoke. They were too close now. Marcus led them across a broken bridge spanning a collapsed crater. At the center stood a tower, bent, jagged, its metal frame twisted around bone and rebar. Smoke rose from somewhere deep within, curling into the sky like a signal or a warning. That tower hadn't been there in any satellite feeds. It hadn't been there at all. "He built it," Miklos whispered. Juno nodded slowly. Or it built itself around him. Marcus stared at the structure. This was it, the heart of the zone, and Reese was inside. "Final checks," he ordered. Travis pulled a scatterload into his shotgun. "No backup." None, Marcus replied. We lose comms once we breach the wall. Inside, it's his world. They approached in silence, boots crunching over glass and ash. At the entrance, Marcus stopped. Symbols had been carved into the metal. Old Earth code. He traced a line with his gloved hand. Only blood opens the gate. He didn't hesitate. A knife across his palm. Blood spilled. The metal groaned, shifting as gears turned in unseen places. The door slid open. Inside was darkness. Not absence of light darkness, but thick, aware darkness. As they entered, the air grew heavier. Not hotter, not colder. Denser. Breathing felt like inhaling grief. The interior was lined with relics, torn flags, bent rifles, helmets, both human and alien. This wasn't shelter. It was a shrine. Smells like gun oil and death, Deckard muttered. They moved deeper. In the center of the tower, they found him. Rhys Brandt. He sat on a throne of scavenged metal and bone. Shirtless, his body a canvas of scars, tattoos, burns. His eyes, cold and sharp, met Marcus's without a flicker of surprise. I was starting to think you wouldn't come, Rhys said, voice low, calm. Marcus stepped forward. You killed them. Rhys didn't blink. Number Earth killed them. I just watched. Deckard raised his weapon. Stand down. Rhys turned slightly. You think this ends in orders? You think Earth cares who shouts the loudest? Travis growled. You made this place a graveyard. Rhys rose slowly. His movements were precise, animalistic. I survived this place, he said, while the rest of you pretended it didn't exist. You could have left, Marcus said. I did, Rhys snapped. Once. I left the zone. I asked for help. I begged. They told me the zone wasn't strategic anymore, that my squad's deaths were acceptable collateral. So I came back. His voice dropped. And I made sure this place would never be forgotten again. Juno stepped beside Marcus. We came to bring you home. Rhys stared at her. You are home. Welcome to Earth. Suddenly the walls vibrated. Screams echoed. Not voices, but recordings. Every soldier who died in this place. Their last moments. Broadcast endlessly through hidden speakers. It was unbearable. Marcus pulled the bullet from his vest, held it up. Do you remember this? Rhys's expression didn't change. I remember everything. You told me to use it if you ever went too far. Rhys stepped closer. And you came all this way, thinking you could. There was no threat in his voice, only certainty. Travis raised his shotgun. Do it, Colonel. Marcus hesitated, because behind Rhys's madness, there was grief, purpose, pain twisted into resolve. He hadn't gone insane. He had gone honest. And for a moment, Marcus wasn't sure Rhys was wrong. But then the lights exploded. Motion sensors triggered. From the ceiling dropped dozens of hanging bodies. Accord soldiers, strung up like meat, their armor fused into the tower's walls. Rhys turned to Marcus. They never left. For a moment, no one moved. The room was frozen in that sickening stillness just before chaos rips through the seams. Marcus stared at the hanging bodies, faces locked in agonized terror, some still fresh, others eaten away by time and insects. Armor warped, blood crusted, limbs bent at impossible angles. Miklos backed up slowly. What in God's name? They begged, Rhys said, voice flat. I heard them, every single one. But Earth doesn't bargain. It consumes. They were just more noise in the zone's throat. Travis stepped forward, finger tight on the trigger. You did this. Rhys's eyes never wavered. Number you did. All of you. You sent them here, knowing what this place does. They didn't die in battle. They were fed to the grinder. I just made sure their deaths screamed loud enough to echo off stars. Don't turn this into a cause, Juno snapped. You're just another broken man playing God. Rhys grinned. No, girl. I'm the mirror you all refuse to look into. Marcus raised his voice. Enough. Reese's gaze shifted. He saw something different in Marcus's face. Not judgment. Not fear. Something far worse. Understanding. You remember it, don't you? Reese said, stepping closer. Our last operation, Helix Protocol. We were told to neutralize a rogue lab, but it was a test site. Children, Marcus. Human experiments. You followed orders. I didn't. Marcus didn't answer. His jaw clenched. That's where it started, Reese continued. That's where Earth lost me. And maybe where you lost yourself. Suddenly the tower groaned. The floor shook. Juno looked down. He rigged this place, Miklos cursed. Of course he did. Reese looked calm. If you're here to kill me, do it now. Otherwise we all go down with this tomb. Marcus raised the bullet again. Time froze. Reese didn't move. He just nodded. Do it, brother. Or join me. Memories surged. Of shared rations in burnt-out bunkers. Of whispered laughter during artillery strikes. Of Reese pulling Marcus from under a collapsed vehicle, bleeding, refusing to run. Then Marcus lowered the bullet. No, he said quietly. You were right. They deserve to hear the screams. Travis turned, shocked. What the hell are you doing? Marcus stepped toward Reese, shoulder to shoulder. I'm not here to kill him. I'm here to unleash him. Juno swore. You've lost it. No, Marcus said. I've found it. He tapped into the tower's console. Signals burst from the structure. Raw data, visuals, screams. The truth about the Accord's failures and the Zone's atrocities. Broadcast on every encrypted frequency the Accord used. What are you doing? Miklos demanded. Marcus didn't look back. Letting the galaxy see Earth for what it is. Not a cradle of life. A warning. Reese grinned. You finally get it. The tower began to collapse, flames licking the supports. Marcus turned to the team. You have two options. Run, or fight for the truth. Juno stared, torn between fury and awe. Reese picked up a rifle from the shrine. Welcome to the Sunder Zone. And then the walls exploded inward. Drones, Accord death squads. They had been watching, waiting. And now they came, guns blazing. Marcus didn't hesitate. He stood beside Reese, weapon drawn, eyes hard. Not as a soldier, as a witness. The firefight erupted like thunder in a bottle. Accord units poured through the crumbling walls. Sleek armor, faceless visors, weapons charged with plasma coils. Efficient, precise, deadly. They moved like wolves, but they weren't ready for monsters. Reese moved first. He was a blur in the dust, all violence and instinct. His rifle barked once, twice, 3 times, each shot finding a skull, a throat, a weak point. He didn't just shoot, he hunted. Marcus followed without hesitation. His shots were slower, more deliberate, controlled fury. He wasn't fighting as an agent of the Accord anymore. He was fighting as a man finally facing the fire he'd helped ignite. Behind them, the team scattered into flanking positions. Travis kicked a collapsing support beam, sending part of the ceiling down onto the incoming squads. Juno rolled under a railing and emerged with twin pistols, her silence broken by a primal scream as she carved a path through the chaos. Miklos climbed what was left of the tower wall, sniper rifle in hand. He picked off commanders one by one, cold and fast, keeping the enemy disoriented. But there were so many, wave after wave. The Accord didn't want survivors. They wanted silence. They're jamming the broadcast, Miklos shouted from above. No, Marcus growled, firing into the swarm. They're too late. It's already out. Reese laughed through the smoke. Then let's give them something worth hearing. He slammed a thermal charge onto a fuel pipe, sending flames roaring through the eastern corridor. Screams followed. Human, digital, alien. The zone lit up like hell was cheering them on. But then, Marcus saw it. Her. A commander. Tall, chrome-plated, the Accord's elite. She stepped through the fire without flinching. Not human. Not anymore. She raised a hand and the ground rippled, EMP pulse. Every device flickered. Lights died. Armor shut down. Juno collapsed, twitching. Miklos fell from the wall, hitting the ground hard. Travis barely got his blade up in time to block a plasma bolt. Marcus tried to move, but his legs faltered. The air felt heavier. Thicker. Reese stepped forward, unaffected. His gear sparked, then went dead. But he didn't slow. "You came for me," he said to the commander. "You should have sent a god." She responded with a fist to his chest, sending him crashing through a support pillar. "Reese!" Marcus roared. The commander turned to him, weapon charging. But Marcus didn't raise his gun. He raised the bullet. RB. He stared her down. "You don't win by silencing the truth." She fired. Too late. Reese came from behind, wrapped in smoke and blood, and drove a steel rod straight through her back. Sparks exploded. Her scream wasn't human. It was synthetic, high-pitched, a death knell. She dropped. The ground shook as the tower gave its final groan. Marcus grabbed Juno, dragging her out. Miklos limped after them. Travis hauled debris aside, clearing a path. Reese held the rear, face cut, hands burned, but smiling. They burst into the open as the tower collapsed behind them in a roar of dust and flame. Silence followed. But this time, it wasn't the zone's silence. It was peaceful. For the first time. Marcus dropped to one knee, coughing blood, gripping his ribs. The others formed a loose circle around him, too dazed to speak. Reese stood above them, silhouetted against the smoldering ruins. "They saw it?" he asked quietly. Marcus nodded. "All of it. The Accord can't cover this." Reese looked to the horizon, where the sky cracked with the glow of incoming ships. Not Accord. Independent vessels. Pirate flags. Earth-aligned rebels. Freelancers. The whole damn galaxy had heard. And now they were coming. Not to conquer Earth. To join it. Dawn broke over the Sunder Zone. Not the cold gray haze they had grown used to, but real light. Golden, soft, cutting through the poisoned air like a promise that something had shifted. The air still stank of metal and ash, but now it held something else too. Hope. Marcus stood on the ridge overlooking the wreckage of the tower. His ribs ached, one eye swollen shut, blood dried into the cracks of his armor. But he was still standing. And so were the others. Miklos sat with his back to a half-buried drone, cleaning his rifle in silence. Juno, bruised and bleeding, stared out at the horizon, watching as more ships entered the atmosphere, ships that didn't belong to the Accord. Travis paced nearby, muttering to himself, checking motion sensors that no longer worked. Reese sat apart from them, near the smoldering heart of the tower. His back was to the team, as if still guarding something, or mourning it. Marcus walked toward him. "You're not going to greet the guests?" he asked. Reese didn't look up. "They're not here for me. They're here for what we showed them." "You think that's a bad thing?" "I think truth's a weapon like any other. Depends who wields it next." Marcus nodded. "You did what the rest of us were too afraid to. You made them look, at the zone, at what Earth became, at what it did to us." Reese finally turned. His eyes were tired. Older than they should have been. "You still have that bullet?" Marcus pulled it from his vest and held it out. Reese stared at it for a long moment, then took it. "You think I should still use it?" he asked. Marcus shook his head. "Not anymore." "You sure?" Marcus didn't answer right away. He looked around at what remained. Ruin, fire, the remains of ghosts and giants. Then he said, "If you wanted to die, you wouldn't have left that trail. You wouldn't have broadcasted the truth. You wanted witnesses." Reese smiled faintly. "Maybe," he said. Or maybe I just wanted to be heard one last time. Overhead, the first wave of rebel shuttles touched down. Flags unfurled, Earth's old crest, shattered and bleeding, but still alive. Independent colonies, rogue factions, pirates, outlaws, all drawn by the same thing. Not Earth's beauty, but its brutality, its raw, merciless honesty. The zone was no longer a secret. It was a symbol, a graveyard turned beacon. Reese stood slowly, bones cracking. "They'll come for us," he said. "The Accord. Once they regroup, once they spin the story." Marcus nodded. "Then we make sure the story survives longer than they do." He turned back to his team. "Fortify what's left. Clear a landing perimeter. Juno, see if you can jury-rig those dead satellites. Miklos, find high ground. We'll need eyes. Travis, you're on supply recon. Go light, go fast." They all moved without argument. They weren't Accord soldiers anymore. They were Sunderborn. Reese stood beside Marcus, the bullet still in his hand. "What now, brother?" Marcus looked to the sky, then to the soil beneath his boots. "Now," he said, "now we teach them why Earth was never conquered,